Thank you. Thank you very much, Sheila. I think I'm going to... This one work? Yeah. I think I'm going to use this one. Thank you very much for that introduction. So I've been told that there's a split in the room between people from agencies and people from the client side. Is that right? Can I have a quick straw poll of who's from an agency background? Okay, and then everybody else I'm assuming is from a client side background. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about what we do and give you some insights into how we do it, and then talk through a case study that I thought would be interesting to you guys. And then I'm going to give you a sneak preview of some thought leadership content that we're actually launching next week at the BMA Congress in Chicago. So you'll be the first people to see it. And you're not supposed to be seeing it either, but nobody knows I'm showing it to you, so it's okay. Okay, so I'll do a little bit about Stein IAS first. So we were actually created about 2 years ago when Stein, which was the US part, and IAS, which was the UK bit, joined together, and both agencies had been specialising in B2B. Stein for about 30 years in the US, and IAS actually goes back about 40 years in the UK and Europe. And our roots actually go back before B2B really existed. IAS stands for Industrial Art Services, because when we started doing marketing for industrial clients, B2B didn't even exist as a term. So it's really in the DNA of the company to be a B2B specialist. When we put the two agencies together, we thought about how we should position ourselves, what our purpose should be, what value we could add to our clients. And so what we came up with was this idea of identifying what's most important to marketers to succeed, and helping our clients become the most important brands in their categories. So we kind of apply this to ourselves as well, and Sheila was very generous in the descriptions of Stein IAS. We definitely aspire to be the best and the most important B2B agency in the world. We're a long way from being the largest. There's 40 of us in New York and about 140 of us in the whole world, spread across 5 offices. So we're not a huge agency by any stretch, but we think that if we can do this for ourselves and we can do it for our clients, if we can become the most important brand, the reference brand, the one that people look to for leadership, for thought leadership, then all of the other good stuff like sales, growth and things like that and profitability will come. And these are the things that we hold to be the most important, and we apply these, as I said, to our clients and to ourselves. So content, we started our content marketing practice about 8 years ago, so it's quite mature now. We have 15 people writing content full-time, but what about another 10 are involved in production of content full-time? So it's a good 20% of the agency just producing content. And as I said, we produce our own content, with some of which I'll share with you guys at the end. Results, we're kind of fanatical about these. So every campaign we do for a client, before we do it, we give them a benchmark that we're going to try and beat. So we say exactly how much they're going to get back if they invest this amount of money. And we measure all of the metrics from the top end marketing metrics all the way through to the funnel to sales, if we've got that data available from them. If not, we work on industry benchmarks to try and prove out what we expect to deliver. Technology is hugely important in what we do, and I'll show you some scary charts about that in a minute. I lost the screen. I can carry on talking for a bit. So technology, as I said, is kind of at the core of what we do. I'll show you an example of it as well. But using technology to enable our marketing is incredibly important. We employ marketing technologists. We can't find enough of them, so we have to train our own. And we often find that clients can't find enough of them either. People is hugely important from 2 perspectives. So we invest a huge amount in training and developing our own people. There's only 140 of us, but we have 2 full-time HR people and 1 full-time training and development person, just dedicated to basically embedding the practices that we create into our business. But also when we think about our clients, it's B2B and people get very wrapped up in the logical and the rational side of it, but ultimately it's still people buying from people. So we think very deeply about the dynamics around that. And then finally, values. So again, brand can be slightly overlooked when it comes to the B2B space, but we believe that we're kind of in an age of marketing where people look for brands to partner with that reflect their own values. So they look for like-minded brands, and we position ourselves as a values-driven organisation as well. So we have our own set of values that drive everything we do, from recruitment to how we engage with clients. And if we have time, I can talk a bit more to that at the back end.
This is not what I want you to talk about when you go back to New York, okay?
That's okay. That's okay. I'm going to click onto the next slide anyway, because I can see it. As I mentioned, we're a B2B specialist, and Sheila talked about some of the awards that we've won. Although there is another agency that claims it, we're the most awarded agency in the history of B2B marketing. They're not just creative awards, although they are important to us, and I'm saying that because the case study I show you does not contain beautiful creative by any stretch. But we win effectiveness awards. So the Agency of the Year awards that Sheila mentioned, we're back up. It's been very important to us and how we promote ourselves. We won that 3 times out of 5 years, and last year they changed the way that they awarded it, otherwise we'd have won it again. So next week at the BMA we're trying to recalibrate with the system. It's a bit like Google Analytics, they keep changing the way that you do it so that you can't win. So next week hopefully that'll happen again. But interestingly, last year we won Marketing Technology Service Provider of the Year, and we beat people like Oracle and Salesforce to that award, because we managed to convince them that the way we use technology and the way that we coordinate it for our clients is actually more valuable than simply being the provider of it. And the other one that's interesting to call out is last year's Marketer of the Year was one of our clients, and going into this year, this is where I kind of, our success is only there because we make our clients successful. So this year, Corporate Marketer of the Year, 3 of the 4 finalists are Stein IAS clients, and both of the Marketer of the Year entrants are our clients as well. And that's something we're really proud of, actually. It's a great thing to be able to talk to your clients about helping them get to the top of their game as well. So back to the most important. So we have a process that we've developed, and I know all agencies do this, and I kind of see clients cringe when we come to the bit where we present our process. We've fundamentally structured our business around this. This has taken us 10 years to develop. So we have 3 most important parts. Most important, insights, which is our strategic process, which takes us from brand strategy and naming and all of that cool stuff, all the way through to messaging. Then interactions, which is where we do all of the channel planning, the media buying, and introducing all of the cool marketing technology that we can use. And then inventions, which is the fancy name for our creative stuff. So what I'll show you is kind of how that works together. So my job is to help coordinate that for our clients, but we have specialists in all of those areas. And so this is how it works. So basically everything that we do is predicated on the idea that there is an extended buyer timeline, a long buyer journey. So as Sheila said, no impulse purchases in B2B. We're talking about considered high value purchases with multiple stakeholders. So the first thing that we do is map out who those stakeholders are. So we identify each of the audiences, we map out their individual buyer journey, and we work out how they interact with each other along that. So if we're selling technology, we might engage with the CIO first. At some point, he's going to need to get somebody to sign a check. So we look at the content that we need for that guy, and then we look at what do we need to convince the finance guy of the business case for making the same investment. Plus, there'll be a tech guy that says, you're going to spend $5 million on this, am I going to spend another $5 million making it work with all of the other stuff we've got? So we have to address all of those questions, and that's what we plan out at the beginning of our engagements with clients. And so then we work out what messaging is appropriate to each buyer at each stage of their individual buyer journey, as well as how they interact with each other. And so that's all wrapped up in insights. Then the next bit is kind of the cool bit, and probably the bit that differentiates us a bit amongst other agencies. So this is where we integrate much more of the technology. So when we talk about interactions, we obviously look at the channels that are most appropriate to all of those audiences across all of their journey, and they use different channels at different stages of that journey as well as using the same channels differently. I can come on to that a bit more. We look at the web platforms that you need to create in order to do buyer journey marketing. And we look at the marketing software that people need as well. And then, as I said, we get really deep into the analytics and the optimization of it. So everything we do is constantly optimized on a daily basis. That's the screen again. And then the final part of that is our creative process, the inventions. And so we talk about creative slightly differently as well. I don't know if you've seen this. One of the things that always goes down very well when we present is we wrote a book of the 101 worst cliches that have appeared in B2B marketing, and then promised never to use any of them, which is actually really difficult, but it's a good talking point when we present as well. So we talk about big ideas in the same way that everybody else does as well. So everybody needs a big idea to stand out, to engage, to get heard. What we also talk about is long ideas. So if you've got a buyer journey that lasts 3 months, 2 years, you want an idea that's long enough to be able to work throughout that entire buyer journey and works as well for presenting a case study as it does for doing an advertising campaign. And that's actually really difficult, but that's what we think is one of the big differences between B2C and B2B marketing. So that's the MI3 process, and what I was going to show you next is some of the examples of how this comes to life in the work that we actually do. So I don't know if we get this back in time.
Pretend it's radio.
Yeah,
Describe it.
Yeah.
Want to take a question or two about any of that front stuff? I was going to ask you about how do you establish your benchmarks with your clients?
So when we do that planning and we look at benchmarks and creating pro formas, results pro formas for campaigns, we look at industry benchmarks that already exist for marketing. If you get into serious decisions and their demand waterfall, and really going through that buyer journey and how that works stage by stage, they actually have metrics for each industry by stage. So when if a client comes to us and they're in the technology space and they're selling wireless internet hardware, we can look at what the benchmarks for them for the progression of their sales funnel should be, and then we can measure. So if we put this in at the beginning, we can engage with this many people in terms of the reach of outbound marketing and advertising. Then we can look at typical conversion rates and model that all of the way through the pipeline. So if we get this many people in here, if we convert them at standard industry levels, what will that ultimately result in? So we set that as a benchmark and then we optimize against it. And generally, if you actually take that approach and you think about it, it's possible to beat them. So this is the buyer journey mapped interactions framework that we use. So we look at the journey from awareness, interest, learn, evaluate, justify, and the little acronyms you see below that are what all of the marketing automation companies and people like Salesforce use to measure their leads throughout the funnel. So go from suspect to prospect to a marketing qualified lead. At that point, when marketing has scored the lead, hand it over to sales, sales accepted lead, sales qualify it, and then ultimately they become a customer, because it's that easy. So what we do is we obviously do all of the marketing bit, but then we produce all of the content and do all of the plans and the mapping for the sales organisation as well, and engage with them about how they should be talking about products and services and solutions too. So a slightly more complicated framework. I'm going to come over the other side. So again, you can see the steps across the top. The way this breaks down, you've got kind of the top end of the funnel here, and then the middle and the back there. The middle and the back is kind of about lead nurturing. Once you've got somebody into your pipeline, it's then about nurturing through that. So everything we do is designed to move people along this journey as quickly as possible. So lead nurturing should basically be kind of static content that lives on your website. It will be about your product and your company, and you shouldn't need to update it that much. It should just be presented in a way that works with that buyer journey. And you'll be talking mainly about yourself and your products at that point. Everything we do at the top end of this, when we're actually going out, creating awareness, engaging with people, getting them interested, starting to profile them and get their data, is what we call dynamic content. So that's where we create quarterly campaigns or weekly campaigns or annual campaigns. All designed to generate awareness, get people to landing pages or into apps where they give us their data and we can start profiling them. So when they get back to this and interacting with the website, we already know who they are, what they're interested in and what content we want to be serving them. And so this is at least 90% issue-led, if not 100% issue-led at this point. So we're not talking to anybody about any products or any solutions at this point. We're just engaging them on the issues that are most important to them. Then as they become interested, we might start talking about the product category that they're interested in, but we still wouldn't be talking about our products or our solutions. It would still be a conversation that's focused around their issues and what's important to them. It's only when we get them into the learn phase, when they've decided what the solution to their issue is, that we actually start talking to them about products. And at that point, we try and accelerate them on as quickly as possible. So you can see that the types of assets that we create, videos, articles, blogs, white papers, trend reports, guides, podcasts, all designed to kind of initially engage with people around an issue. And then as you get more into it, we get into all of the normal B2B stuff, like data sheets and podcasts and things like that. So the next bit definitely won't work by me describing it. I was going to show you the scary technology bit, the bit that sits behind all of that. And as I said, this is kind of one of the areas that differentiates Stein IAS. Normally, if you want the marketing technology to be able to automate that process, because it is complicated, you're talking to multiple buyers at multiple stages, you're trying to profile them, understand exactly what content that they want, what assets they need from you, and serve that up to them proactively. You can only actually do that if you automate that process. If you try to do it manually, which I have seen people do, it would drive you mad. Probably end up with the world's largest Excel sheets and entire call centres of people doing things. But if you use some of the marketing technology platforms like Eloqua, like Marketo, like Salesforce Marketing Cloud, you can automate this whole process. And in a minute, hopefully, a ridiculously scary slide will appear. It's not as scary as it looks, but it is kind of intense. I'll just dwell for a second, see if we can get it back. But if not, I can move on. Oh, after this is a case study, which I'm going to struggle to show as well.
Yeah, y'all are going to have to go to BMA National or whatever international leaders review.
Will you be presenting this next week too?
No.
No.
Just the thought leadership bit at the end.
A bunch of us will be.
Sorry?
So a bunch of the board members are going to be.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Sam, I do have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned talking to the CIO. Do you see more of that happening in the discussion as they bring in the chief financial officer? Because I know a couple of companies that don't have CMOs, they're now reporting to people are reporting to the CFO.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the things that we map out and we profile and we work out all of the kind of personas of different people. But for the big technology stuff, their role's actually often quite limited. So they'll be in there because somebody's identified an issue to them or they've identified it. We engage on that, and then actually they kind of disappear from the selling process. It gets technical and financial and business orientated really quickly.
Okay.
Okay, so this was the scary technology bit. It's great, isn't it? So this is basically a system that's set up with Oracle, Eloqua, and Salesforce. It's not as bad as it looks. Basically, you've just got web properties here. So you think you have your corporate website, maybe some kind of campaign hub, and then landing pages for the stuff that you do. The bit at the top is basically all of your inbound and outbound marketing and how it links into this. And then ultimately, it just integrates with a CRM system like Salesforce. So it means that actually when we work with our clients, we can look at where leads have come from and how quickly they progress through the sales funnel. So we can say, okay, the stuff we're doing in LinkedIn with LinkedIn groups is actually bringing a load of people into this, and we can see their progression through the funnel, and we can actually then work out whether or not they convert to customers. We can look at how quickly they convert, we can see what percentage of them convert. So we could say that the LinkedIn stuff's great, it brings in loads of people, but none of them buy anything. What actually really works is maybe the content marketing campaign that we've got over here. It's bringing in less people, but they're all highly qualified sales opportunities, they're flying through the funnel and they're converting to a high value. So it means that we can look at somebody's entire digital marketing ecosystem and turn stuff off or replace it, new bits of content, new marketing campaigns. You can get very scientific with whether or not things work, and that's actually the kind of bit about B2B marketing that I particularly love. I'm going to go quickly so that I'm not even going to bother with that. I want to show you, make sure I show you some creative before we finish. So I'm going to, I should go back one. I'm going to show you a case study of Chicago Board Options Exchange. They've been a client of ours for about 4 or 5 years, and they're kind of our best client. We have a great partnership with them. They're not our biggest client, but they let us do cool stuff. They actually don't have that technology stuff in place. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to share, A, because there's obviously a big financial services market here, but also because even without all of that stuff working in the background, you can still do a lot of these really cool things. So this is the situation when we started working with them. They were one of a number of exchanges being joined by a load more exchanges in a fairly commoditized business. Market share was shrinking. They were perceived as technology laggards, and the stuff that they were selling to people, options, was exactly the stuff that everybody thought had brought the financial crisis crashing down upon us. So there were some kind of question marks about the actual products and services that they offered as well. And so options are just, they are amongst the most complicated financial vehicles you can ever possibly imagine. So you can imagine that we've had to learn a lot about them to do it. I still wouldn't consider myself an expert. But it's really just guessing how much stuff is going to cost in the future and then betting on it, which is why it can go wrong. So this was the advertising that they had before we started. And the agency that did this, and I'm not going to be mean to them, are still very proud of it. They still have it on their website. And there is elements of this that I really like as advertising. Some of it's very, very engaging. So you can see the whole accept no substitute thing going on. He's wearing oven gloves instead of boxing gloves. And then you've got the jockey on the carousel. The problems with this were all strategic rather than aesthetic. They look nice. I like them. They're very engaging. It's doing a number of things wrong. It's talking about the exchange, and it's taking a very defensive positioning because CBOE was the original exchange in the options marketplace. It was the one that was losing market share. And the whole kind of message coming from this is that you should go back to the original one. You should accept no substitutes. Don't go to the new ones. Stick with the old one. And that's actually not what anybody wants to hear. Nobody wants to stick with the old stuff. Everybody wants something new and exciting. So it's a very defensive posture to take with your marketing. The other problem is that it's also marketing the exchange rather than what's on the exchange. And the exchanges don't really matter. They're just places where you trade. No one cares about them. They care about what you can trade on them. So the first thing that we did when we started working with them was actually look at that whole brand strategy. So we look at how they were positioned and what they were actually saying to the market. So we did some tidying up of the logo. It was all a bit of a mess, and we did some nice creative, and we came up with the tagline, execute success. And the interesting thing about this, so it massively appealed to them and to their audience. We actually only activated it internally. Marketing the brand, the exchange brand, only ever happened within CBOE. We never took this externally, but they did invest in it, and it helped galvanise them. What we actually took out to their customers, and this is the bit where I show you much less beautiful creative, was flipping the brand and the products around. So they actually had products which were quite technologically advanced, which kind of lost in all of the brand messaging. So we kind of did what we called at the time inverse branding. So we tried to kind of drag the brand up by the bootstraps by marketing the products very aggressively and putting the products out there and saying, hey, these are technologically advanced products. You can only get them at CBOE. And that's actually what the traders care about, is what they can trade rather than where they can trade it. These things, as I said, don't look beautiful, but if you're a trader, that kind of language means a lot to you. It resonates with you. It works very well with those people. And there's some people nodding, so that means that works. So the whole strategy flipped to marketing products in order to promote the brand. And we started doing content marketing for them. So we created a ton of the usual stuff. So strategy briefs, white papers. There's a lot of people that don't know enough about options, so we did a lot of educational stuff. CBOE actually has an institute that educates people, so we did a lot of promotion of that. So we weren't kind of directly promoting CBOE, but we were using a lot of content that we created in order to do that. And there's only so far that you can go with this. The best thing that we did in the content space was actually some custom content that we created, which is the VIX report that runs on Bloomberg TV. So it's a 15-minute slot that happens a couple of times every day and is sponsored by CBOE. But VIX stands for the Volatility Index, and it's a product that CBOE created. So it's when you trade it, you're trading the volatility in the marketplace. So when prices are fairly static and there's not much disruption going on in the world, you don't want to trade volatility because it's not moving up and down a bit. But in the world we live in, it goes up and down a lot, and you can actually just trade the whole index, so buy and sell the whole index. It's a proprietary product to CBOE, and it has a halo effect on all of their other products. So we created this, and now the VIX report runs every day, and it's watched by everybody in the industry. But it's actually CBOE content. We're in front of all of those people every day. We then take it and execute it everywhere else. So it appears on TV once a day, but we use it everywhere else in our marketing, so all the way through down to social media. We went on a journey with CBOE in terms of digital innovation. So when they started, it was press advertising, a bit of TV advertising, and they did some radio. And then gradually, and you have to do all of this stuff gradually, if you try and do it all at the same time, you'll break everybody. We started experimenting, and this is why CBOE is such a great client for us. They let us experiment a bit, so there's always a bit of the budget, which is stuff that they've never done before. And it proves itself out, and we do the stuff that works really well again and again and again, and keep adding more things to it. And we now actually have a really interesting digital ecosystem for them. So we do some of the stuff that you'd expect. We do lots of mobile stuff, expandables, where we take over people's mobile devices, sort of app within an app, advertising, and we do what we call nano sites, which is a fancy name for really cool banner adverts where you can watch videos in them, you can engage with content in them, you can find yourself into quite deep links within the CBOE website. So they're very rich and engaging things. We also go crazy for hyper-targeting because we have quite a small universe of people that we want to influence. So we talk about by investor preference. We do attitudinal targeting now as well, contextual targeting, behavioural targeting, and then geographic. And the geographic stuff is kind of obvious. So there's a few key trading places in the world that you want to target. So we've taken it to the next level, and I've just realised there's a pun. So we target people on their mobile device by how high up they are. So we can work out not just where you are in the world, but what floor of the building you're on. So if we know that a particular trading room is on the 27th floor of a building, we can target people with adverts on their mobile device who are only on that floor of the building. So one of the journeys we've created is people will go into their building, they'll see our advertising on the networks in their lobby, in the elevators. They'll get to their desks. We'll be able to target with them with desktop advertising because we know the IP address of their organisation. And then when they walk away from their desk and look at their phone, we target them with advertising on their phone as well. So we can hit somebody 4 times in the space of that day. The latitudinal, longitudinal targeting stuff is quite new. We don't know whether that's going to work, but it's fun to try. And most of the stuff we do does work. And again, there's never been a huge investment in creative. We invest much more in the media and trying to make these things work. So we had a very small budget to create this campaign, which is the one currently running, the Faces campaign. One of our art directors actually created an app where you take a picture of somebody and it creates their face like that. So we created that and use it, and that's all that sits on the ads. But it's very effective, and the headlines work very well. Native is something that people talk about a lot, and it's really just getting your content in the right place. We do this a huge amount, so we produce a huge amount of content for CBOE, get it out into the world, put it in the places where we know people are looking for it. It works much better than advertising, in all honesty. In terms of performance with them, so we're not able to measure sales and how they close in this instance, mainly because people don't give access to that type of trading data to marketing agencies. So we measure awareness and perceptions on an annual basis. We look at trading consideration, and then we look at trading volumes. And we look at trading volumes across the industry. We strip out the averages so that we're only left with what is CBOE's performance, so we can see whether or not we're actually performing up or down. The next chart goes like that, or like that for you guys, and was a measure of response rates to digital advertising. So back to those kind of industry benchmarks, there's an industry benchmark of 0.1% of response rates for people with these job titles in this area, which is why people say you're more likely to get struck by lightning than to click on a banner advert. We beat that from the beginning by pretty much twice, and now we're into 3-4 times that, because we've learned as we've gone, and we do different types of advertising in different places, and we use that hyper-targeting. So one of the types of targeting we use is programmatic advertising. I don't know if you guys have come across it, but you can set it up with networks. You don't have to do this yourself. You tell them who you want to target, what industries they're in, and then the advertising algorithm learns when it's most effective. So you set it off into the world on a big wide network of digital advertising. It looks at who's converting, when they're converting, where they've been before they come to you, where they go afterwards, and then projects that forwards and becomes clever and clever and clever about how it targets in the future. So really cost-effective way to reach people at scale and to do it very effectively. So that's one of the key drivers of that success. There's another chart that goes like this. This one is Google interest. Thank you, Adam. Great job. And again, so we're kind of looking for proxies by which we can measure the success of what we do. Google interest is fairly new, not many people use it, but it looks at search terms and search volumes amongst a load of other things. And again, it's kind of murky because Google don't really tell you how they come up with the numbers. But you've got a maximum score of 100. We started off at 40, and we were able to track over time and look at the activity we did, what was generating interest on the internet.
I didn't hear the name of it.
Google interest. Yeah. So it's an index of interest in your brand or your products or your keywords. The next stuff's not going to work. And then we look at, ultimately we get to looking at trading volumes. So we look at CBOE's trading volumes, we look at the industry averages so that we're back. So we can strip out all of the stuff that we know was nothing to do with us that would have happened anyway. And there are about 8 or 9 exchanges that we can aggregate what's happening on them and strip that out. But ultimately, we've seen that we've been instrumental, we didn't do it all, in driving record trading volumes for the last 5 years, and that's bucked the trend, and we've seen it deliver increased market share as well.
How much is it trading on your head?
Not loads. A lot of the interactions we do with traders is on their mobile device, but they actually have to trade generally when they're sat down at desks with like 50 screens in front of them. It's interesting if you go to CBOE, and I know you have some trading rooms here as well. Even the ones at CBOE are all empty now. There's only one that's left that they actually have a live pit where people trade and chat to each other, which is kind of fun to watch from the boardroom. But it's all electronic now, so people are just dispersed all over the world doing it. You can't the kind of outdoor advertising that they were doing 5 years ago wouldn't work because people aren't in the same place anyway. And then they're one of the clients that we win tons of awards for, and they're one of the ones that next week are up for Corporate Marketer of the Year as well. So there's, as I said, 3 of our clients plus Cisco, who are probably going to win it. But it's nice to be considered in that mix. The nice thing about it is you probably wouldn't have heard of the other 3 companies. You'd have heard of Cisco, but you wouldn't have heard the other ones. They're genuinely doing very good, very effective advertising. And so I don't know if anybody else has any questions on that before I talk about some of the content we create.
I have a quick question. I've worked with a couple of multi-billion-dollar companies that are B2B, and they're so entrenched in kind of the old school sales mentality of the personal relationship that they don't invest in technology. So can you apply these same concepts without all of those technology pieces already in place, or do you have to go in and sell them on the technology and information systems first to be able to effectively do this?
Yeah. So to an extent we do, and we're fortunate because of what we do and the reputation we have and the amount of marketing technology that we invest in personally. we kind of attract clients that are wanting to go on that path. So we get people right at the very beginning, still fighting against their sales organisations, still trying to convince their senior leadership, but there's a kind of cadre of people in the business that are already fighting for it. I mean, one of the reasons I showed CBOE is because they don't have any of that marketing technology behind it. They don't have CRM systems, they don't have sales forces in that sense. They have some business development people. But their business doesn't work that way, and we don't even have a marketing automation platform in place for them yet, and I think we will. But everybody goes on different journeys, and even when you kind of first put one in place, we generally try and tell clients that in 3 or 4 years' time, you'll be doing a really sophisticated version of this. Like this year, we're just going to sort out the basics. We're going to get a buyer journey in place. We're going to get people understanding how sales and marketing are going to interact, how we're going to serve up content to people, and how we're going to do kind of basic automated campaigns. So it takes a long time. But yeah, we're lucky in a way because we get people who, at least some people in the organisation, are already advocates for it. So, does anybody else have any other questions?
Without that automation, how would you tips for how to really start ramping up your content and for addressing that purchase funnel?
Yeah, so I mean, one very visible place to do it is obviously with content-led campaigns, kind of at the front end of things, so driving demand into the top of the funnel. So we did some great work for ADP, who are a very old school business, very, very sales-led, very siloed down the lines of business as well. They had the idea that they wanted to pivot from being a payroll company, and I think they pay about 1 in 6 Americans, so probably lots of you get your paycheck from ADP. So they're a giant, and that's how they make all of their money. They actually make all of their money by keeping our wages for 3 days, investing it, and then giving it to us, but that's another thing. We worked with them. They wanted to become more of a human capital management business and actually apply a lot more of the solutions, the HR solutions that they had, bring that to bear on their brand. So one of the things we did that kind of helped them pivot, helped change people's minds, was a content-led campaign around Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act. Because basically the Affordable Care Act is like 2,000 pages of regulations that nobody understands. It just makes your head hurt. ADP does actually have people that understand it, and we worked with them. I turned that 2,000-page tome into an 8-page document of 5 strategies of what you need to do to deal with the Affordable Care Act. So it's 5 things you need to know, 5 strategies that you could do. The most successful piece of content we've ever produced. We did real-time marketing around it, so kind of tweeting live as their announcements, that kind of thing. It was kind of fake real-time marketing because we could plan it, so we knew when all of the announcements about the Affordable Care Act were going to come out, so we had all of our stuff ready to go at each stage of that. So it looked like we were doing real-time marketing. It was actually planned out quite a long way in advance. But that core piece of content drove millions of pounds of sales leads into their business. Millions of dollars, in fact, of sales leads into their business. I still get myself caught out. And it was incredibly visible, and it helped them decide that kind of content marketing was going to be very useful to them. But it was a standalone piece in one campaign. We just created the content and then promoted that instead of promoting ADP. And like I say, it was more successful than anything else they did. So I think if you can latch onto a kind of one thing, I've got the same thing with a client launching a new brand at the moment. They've got some research that they did that justified why they were launching the new brand. And when they showed it to us, we're like, you just have to share that with everybody. If you tell people, if you give that to people, that they'll understand why you've created this brand and why it's valuable to them. So we don't need to do a big advertising campaign positioning it. We just need to get that piece of content out into the world, and that's what people will find most valuable. So quite often it exists within organisations. It's a case of finding it and then turning it into something that people can use. So the Digital Marketing Maturity Index is a long name. So what we decided to do was actually do a global survey of B2B marketers to find out how sophisticated people's marketing was, to allow them to benchmark themselves against their peers, against the industry as a whole, against people in their country, against people in their the vertical that they compete in. So we did a big survey. It's fairly easy to do. We found a media partner. We actually found a partner in Oracle in this case, who had a big database of CMOs. Said, "Do you want to do it with us?" So they did they provided us the list. We did a short 12-question app that you fill in. So the whole thing didn't cost us really any money at all. And then we sent it out to all these people, and people like finding out how good they are and how developed they are versus other people. So lots and lots and lots of them started filling in this survey. And the interesting thing about this is it's basically the same as the demand generation tools that we create for our clients. So by filling in this survey, you tell us all of the digital techniques that you currently use, all of the software that you use, and how good you are at it. So we actually then already know that about our prospective clients before we then go and talk to them. That's an inside tip. But that's the kind of stuff that we create for our clients, as well as kind of diagnostic tools that people are interested in that actually provide a lot of information back to a sales force. Like I said, I'll give you a sneak preview of this, and I'll go really quickly. So what we did ultimately is we categorized people as either digital masters, digital pragmatists, or digital explorers. So everybody was somewhere on this journey, from a low level of maturity to a high level of maturity. So you've got the kind of early adopters, customer obsessed, creating dynamic, personalized content and online experiences for their customers, with really strong metrics at this end. And then you've got the people that are just getting into this at the other end, who are doing their best to kind of align on online and offline at the same time. And so we did this survey is all B2B CMOs. There are some of the biggest companies in the world represented in this, and then lots of smaller ones. This is what we found. An incredibly low amount of people are actually doing this. And if you speak to people like Oracle, they reckon that about 30% of customers have any kind of marketing automation platform in place. I think it's actually less than that. And from our experience, more than half the people that come to us might have it in place, but they don't actually use it. So there aren't many people in the world doing really advanced digital stuff, but there are a lot of people starting that journey and starting to do it. And that's actually where most of our clients come from. We have a few at that digital master end, because there's not that many people they can work with, but most of the people we work with are people who are kind of starting that journey. So you can see, if you're being generous, benchmarking yourself against a pragmatist would be a good place to be. I've chopped out all of the stats which break down in the survey, which will be available from next week, because I think I'd get killed if I shared those. But this is just kind of what that means in terms of being a digital master. So we looked at, it's kind of buyer-journey mapped as well. So how you reach and attract, how you engage and inspire, how you nurture and convert. So that's the sales funnel from awareness all the way to purchase, and then how you analyze and optimize that. So you've got, for the most advanced people, fully integrated marketing clouds like that map that I showed you, which actually there's more complicated versions of that. Everything working together, you can analyze. At the other end, you've got maybe people that have acknowledged that there's a buyer journey and they're trying to map to it, but that's as far as they've got. Digital explorers, just getting on and offline together. That's basically, basic reporting and metrics, but none of the kind of dynamic content that's possible, and it's not that hard to do. So there's actually quite a big chasm there, and there are certain investments that you need to get up there. I think CBOE is a good example, because CBOE would be digital masters on some levels of this, and they would be below digital explorers on other levels of this. So there's, you can make a good start without having to set yourself up like IBM or Cisco. And these are the key takeaways from this as well. Enterprises are generally good at the beginning bit, or getting better at the beginning bit, but not very good at tracking sales throughout their sales funnel, taking credit for those sales that they created, and then being able to analyse what type of leads were the most successful ones that they created. Web optimization and lead scoring is really not that difficult, but it's something that doesn't get done very much. So that kind of greater customer intimacy and financial accountability, and I would probably just bang on about that integration with sales again being incredibly important. there is a certain amount of technology you need to invest in to get anywhere on this scale. And building partnerships with marketing technologists, whether they're external like ourselves or internal, is a big part of this as well. So there's a really interesting report with lots of interesting stats, which you can either see next week or get next week. All of our content is available for free on our website as well. We just use it as lead generation tools. And that was it from me. Apologies for the slides disappearing. I think I busked it okay. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to ask them. I know I haven't got loads of time left though. The what, sorry? Yes. Yeah. So you were talking about McKinsey buying an agency, and I also saw a little while ago there was an announcement from IBM said that they were going to set up a marketing team of 1,000 people to focus on digital marketing, which is kind of interesting when you see people like that taking it that seriously. We work with Accenture quite a lot. They're working with clients, designing their marketing automation systems, designing their marketing departments for them, because you need to, in a lot of cases, you need to fundamentally change your marketing department to be able to do this type of stuff. So we see that a lot, and it's actually quite scary, because you see people like McKinsey coming into your space. At the moment, like I said, we kind of occupy an interesting place where we can do brand strategy, advertising, the tech stuff that you can't normally get from somebody else, and then the creative. And putting that together helps us stand out, but there's people catching up on that already. And then from the type of thing you're talking about, there's people going upstream of that as well. So it's going to be a really interesting marketplace, scary marketplace.
To that point, what do you think is, when you're looking at how you're approaching things, how much for driving purchase decisions is the message, or how much of it is the moment? So in other words, are you reaching people at the right place at the right time? Is the message as crucial maybe as it has been in the past, or is it just reaching your target audience at the right place? So just getting the name, getting the brand awareness out there versus a compelling message like with the
Yeah, I think there's a tendency with the very smart digital targeting that we can do, and the importance that everybody kind of rightly is placing on content, to actually kind of forget about the creative part of it, and the messaging and the visual impact that you're trying to make can get really lost in it. And I think that's a mistake, because that's a lot of the emotional engagement that you need with a brand, and it can be, we know, we test creative as well as we test everything else. Good creative gets you a lot further than average creative. But I think actually with the technology and the content, you can make average creative perform very well, and better than good creative that doesn't have the targeting behind it. So I think the goal has to be to get the strategy, the targeting and the creative all aligned. I don't think you should deprioritise the kind of creative and the messaging, but actually you can. We've seen it. You can. It's a shame, but you can get away with it. You can get campaigns to perform much better by how you target them and how good your content is. We good? Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, thank you very much for having me and letting me share with you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.